now recognize Mr. Takano for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Acting Secretary Sue, welcome. It's great to see you again. And I'm proud to be among the members of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus who sent a letter to President Biden in February urging him to nominate you as Labor Secretary. I ask unanimous consent to enter that letter into the record, Madam Chair.
Without objection.
I'd also like to highlight a letter that was sent this very morning, led by the chairs of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, and Democratic Women's Caucus, urging Senate leadership to swiftly confirm Ms. Sue. The letter ended up with 71 signers. I ask unanimous consent to enter this letter into the record, Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Without objection.
And furthermore, the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce has voiced their support for Ms. Sue's nomination as Labor Secretary. I ask unanimous consent for this letter to be entered into the record, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
you
sir.
do. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Acting Secretary, as you know, we had a Workforce Protection Subcommittee hearing that addressed the Labor Department's proposed rule on the misclassification of workers as independent contractors. From what I understand, no one objected much to what was in the proposed rule because it was so reasonable. Many business groups now expressing opposition to your nomination issued statements saying that your department was the direction that your department was taking with this rule was very reasonable. Now, first, does the proposed rule from the Biden administration on misclassification adopt the ABC test?
Thank you very much for that question, Congressman, and thank you for the support of KPAC. It has been very meaningful. No, the proposed independent contractor rule of the Department of Labor does not include the ABC test.
Thank you. In fact, the proposed rule even says, does it not, on page 62,230 of the Federal Register notice that, quote, the department continues to believe that legal limitations prevent the department from adopting the ABC rule or the ABC test. Is that correct?
It is correct, Congressman, that we were very explicit that we could not, as the Department of Labor, apply an ABC test, that only Congress could do that.
Well, thank you. And am I correct that the position of the department is that you cannot adopt the ABC test unless Congress passes a law enabling you to do that?
That is correct.
Thank you. And do you believe that the constitutional order of separation of powers means that the department may only implement rules that are consistent with the laws that Congress passes?
Yes, sir.
Is it true that instead of an ABC test, the proposed rule implements what is called the economic realities test? Is that right?
That is correct, Congressman.
And this economic reality test is consistent with decades of federal precedent under both Republican and Democratic administrations. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, as previously noted, the DOL proposed rule is not the ABC test. Lyft and the International Franchise Association, two of the largest entities most vocal in their opposition to the ABC test, even came out with their own statements when the proposed rule was released. Lyft unequivocally stated that the rule did not reclassify Lyft drivers as employees and that their business model would not be forced to change. The International Franchise Association statement about DOL's proposed rule applauded the proposal and expressed recognition that the ABC test does not apply to the FLSA. I ask unanimous consent for these statements to be entered into the record, Madam Chair.
Without objection.
These very companies themselves that were most vocal against the ABC test are expressing praise for the DOL proposed rule. Democrats are not the only ones praising this rule. Now, I've heard a lot of fear-mongering from my colleagues, Republican colleagues, about your role with AB 5 in California after it was passed by the state legislature and signed by the governor. So, Acting Secretary Sue, yes or no, did you serve in the California state legislature?
I did not, Congressman.
And yes or no, was the California state legislature the branch of the state government that passed AB 5?
Yes, it was.
And were you, where were you when this state law was passed?
I was serving as the California Labor Secretary.
And yes or no, were you legally required to implement this law as State Secretary of Labor once it was enacted?
Yes, I was.
Thank you, Acting Secretary Sue. It's outrageous and desperate that my Republican colleagues are firing baseless attacks from you, trying to get your opinion about the law and was it a good law or a bad law. They're failing in their attempt to try and mischaracterize you. Acting Secretary, you spent your whole life fighting to improve the lives of working people. And as the daughter of immigrants, you represent the best in us. And the story that your mother coming to the United States on a cargo ship because she could not afford a passenger ticket, and now her daughter is up for Senate confirmation, truly represents the American dream. I'm so proud of you. I appreciate your being with us today and look forward to you being confirmed Secretary of Labor. Thank you. I yield back.